Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, let's fix the problem. I'm so sorry. Very much. Okay. If we would like to start off with our acknowledgements.
Yes. So we do have just some people are saying, so I just want to. Well, so we have computer and computer sciences and competition, right? I'm going to introduce it for a minute. I'll let you get it corrected. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Hi,
I apologize.
I'm Beth Penny. I'm the advisor of the Technology Student Association at the high school. And we have some of the members that competed this year at the Connecticut and New England state regional competitions. So I just wanted to acknowledge their hard work that they've been preparing for the event that recently took place from the beginning of the year. So there's been a lot of work that has gone into this. And we had some repeat competitions. The students here for the video game design had competed last year and had performed very well. And they repeated their third place performance, so that was great to see. They even added a member to their group. And for the first time, we had robotics competitions in the VEX skills competition, and they placed first in the regional competition, so that was great. And we also had competing for the first time in board game design. So a board game made completely from scratch, created the board pieces using 3D modeling software and 3D printed the pieces, came up with the rules. And so we were very excited to participate in some repeat competitions and some new ones to add to our list. There are some students here that performed in the coding competition. They weren't able to make it tonight, and it's called Sci Viz. It's scientific visualization, and that student created completely original artwork to demonstrate the fourth dimension. So a video production of narrated with her artwork to explain the fourth dimension, and she came in second.
This is the Connecticut State New England Regional Technology Competition, right?
Yes.
That's great. You guys did an amazing job. So this is game design and coding and Sci Viz and all of that.
Yes.
So you're the next game designers and programmers. You're gonna make the world go around and around. Has the NSA called any of you yet? Sure they're interested.
How come we don't have little video clips and like the board game to see? That'd be neat.
Well,
The board game is currently submitted. I have to go. I have
It's
to go get
pending
it back.
patent, you know, it's
Yeah.
pending patent. You can't just put it out there. Is it Alexander Johnson and yeah, I can, you know, Alexander Johnson and Costa Meyer, Xuan Zhang, Daniel Duff, right? We'd love to know, more about your projects. Anybody want to share a little bit about it? Because we're intrigued and we are not coders ourselves, so we have no idea how you do what you do. But we'd love to hear about
I love the looks.
Teamwork for the team.
So for game design, one of the main things that we utilized was a game design software, Unity. And that helped us it was already pre-made and helped us sort of build the game inside its engine. And that's what our main component was to coding, styling, everything.
You like the Unity platform?
Yes, it's a good platform to use, not very complicated.
Have you guys talked to Mr. Scher?
We both actually work for him.
Yeah, no, he designed the game in Unity too, or is, right? That's great. And you guys work with him to kind of do that?
We discuss things with him.
Nice, very, very cool. Well, you're definitely going to be richer than any of us, especially at a young age. And anyone else want to share something about your project? I mean, they're really, really cool stuff.
What was your favorite part of the video game design?
I gotta say the graphic design was a big thing.
Graphics,
I'll
okay.
stand up
Alright.
because I was making a Qbert kind of inspired game, because we basically made different games and put it in one, because you had to submit one singular game. So it was different levels switching the platform. So it was I was Qbert kind of. So trying to get the blocks together to make it kind of look like Qbert, but not quite, because you can't really. Similar enough, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just some rectangular dude. And the thing is, a lot of things happen when you're working with a game that can break at any moment. So try to get it moving, graphic design's good, and then a light flies up into the air and you'll never see it. It's honestly a fun experience.
What inspired you to choose Qbert?
Oh, because I think my mother likes the game a lot.
There you go.
Good answer. Yeah.
There's not enough of the 80s games around. Alexander, did you want to say something? I thought you
I did a great job
Yeah.
in my board game. I used many different things like a 3D printer.
Wow.
I drew a board out and pasted it on a piece of cardboard, and then I typed out the instructions. And printed them out. Then after that, I also 3D printed the dice. Then I had to find the right box to fit the game, and I found it.
That is not easy.
How many players do you have for your game? How many players can you play?
Game is for 2 players.
Two
If there are
players.
more than 2, you have to split into teams.
What's the name of the game?
It's called Run Johnny Run.
Maybe when you get it back, we can see it in person. That would be great.
We can kick the owl out and we can play it. That's awesome.
So I see from some stuff.
Yeah.
Are you inspiring this?
I am not a computer person, so. But I'm amazed by these guys. They worked right till the end and they're showing up at my house.
Remember to take care of her, right? When you're rich and everything.
Yes.
Well, protect us from the Russians. Yeah, the hackers.
I'll say it was impressive watching them all work together as a team, bouncing ideas off each other, talking about coding, nothing I know anything about.
Right.
And they had some music playing, they had a good time, but it was really inspiring watching these kids work together. It's impressive.
They still use subroutines in coding? That's still a thing?
You might be aging yourself.
Take that as a no.
Okay, I don't think you're doing questions there. Yeah, they're all-
Dr. Willet's about to bring out COBA.
So I'm gonna,
And Dan did double duty, so it was Dan and Ashton that competed in the skills competition for the robotics. So you can tell them what was involved in that.
So basically, we had to create a robot from with a specific platform, just like specs, just like specific parts and stuff, and make it perform specific duties, pretty much. And we did that, and we got first. Out of 3.
what duty did it perform?
So like it's a game, and you got to program it for like 15 seconds, was it? And then to make it pick up certain objects and put it in a certain place.
You ever see Ender's Game?
No.
No, you're probably doing that with the Mars rover. Because we need you guys to do this. Very cool, guys, and thank you.
Thank you. So
I
I do have
appreciate
some
it.
certificates if you wouldn't mind.
Of course, yes, of course. So the owl will pick you all up.
Oh, yeah.
Come up and we stand. to
It
the
just
side.
knows.
And then,
I'll stand on the side. Alright, so you can, they did it all together. So, but
Daniel, Willem, Eric, William, Eric, and Justin.
yes,
Nice.
come on up. I didn't know you were gonna be here, well, so I don't have yours, but I
Do you know what you
have
do?
one
You
for
guys
all
can
of
come
them.
up, hold it.
Yeah,
take a
there you
picture
go.
of you
Perfect.
holding it,
Yes.
And we will post you for posterity on the
There you go.
Facebook/Meditate.
Come on.
All four of us.
Okay.
Four of us are with
Yes,
us.
yeah.
Here, let me.
Oh, okay, so,
Nice to-
right,
nice to
get
meet
out
you.
there. We'll be back around the corner.
Yeah, we're here, we're here.
Well, I got you.
Here, well, I got your,
You guys can come on over and each of you can hold your award.
Oh, she just wants the names.
Oh, you want the names?
Is it connected to
Happens
my-
to
is this my
everybody.
name or
Scott,
no?
some of the mayor.
Sorry.
I can send it, it's electronic.
It's either that or you.
I'm kidding so much. All right, how about we have Daniel, William, Eric, and Justin? And then you guys hold this, and we'll take that picture, and then we'll take the next group, okay?
All stack these on the table.
Are they all the,
They're all
oh,
the
they all have the same, all right.
They
Each
all-
of you holds one then. I think that's the best way. You can hold them up, and I'm gonna kneel down like I always do, next to the owl. I don't really need to kneel, actually. Ready, guys? Just make sure you all get in there.
All right, can we get one back away with the blinking?
Congratulations, guys. Cheers. You gotta, mind, go. How they come out to your program.
Wait, what?
They ready for my?
Wait, what?
Standing squat.
Yeah, that's, come on, yeah.
There you go. You can hold up.
Maybe go to the left and the right here. That way I don't have to kneel, that's great.
Natural.
Excellent.
Sorry. Nice job.
All right.
Right. Oh.
No, let's stand up. You can stand up.
That's nice. That was the nicest thing anyone's ever done.
Hey, that looks great.
That was
a nice job.
Congratulations. You did great.
Good job.
Thank you very Great, thank you. Everybody good? Great, thank you so much.
Thank
you so much for
Thank
coming.
Thank you.
Great job, yes.
Thank you. I love doing that.
Best way to start the meeting.
Isn't it? Okay, everyone.
Four people.
Okay, well, let's go to the approval of agenda. We don't have any changes right now, so I think that we're good as is. Let's move to the approval of minutes. Motion to approve both the May 11th. Go ahead.
I just had a comment. Lisa, for the May 11th special meeting, I was actually not here. I came in during the pledge of the regular meeting, so I don't know. I need to note that I was probably 5 minutes late, but I was not at the first special meeting.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you. It took me a second, I get it.
Any other corrections at this time? Okay, I'll entertain. Approve both the May 11th Board of Ed meeting and then the special meeting.
Tony Holt, I move that we approve the May 11th BOE meeting and May 11th special BOE meeting with the changes from the description.
Sophia Shake, second. Any other further discussion? All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait, we do have a board member, right? Jaden, you are on mine. This is gonna be so easy. We're gonna do easy votes. Jaden, aye.
He just disappeared.
I know, I saw his hand up.
Oh, he's back. Okay, you're back, Jaden. Do you wanna vote on?
Hey, folks. Yeah, I'm an I. It keeps kicking me in and out. Bad service, not intentional.
Okay, perfect. And I'm aye as well, therefore they pass unanimously.
Well, I'll abstain. I wasn't there for either one.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
You didn't say anything, so I got sidetracked with Jaden not being on and off, so, okay. So Lisa, you have that Jacob is abstaining, but Jaden did say yes as well. So let's move to the public participation. So at this time, since our boardroom is so full, anyone online can raise their hand, and if you could list your name and your address, you will be given 2 minutes to discuss what you would like to discuss. Yeah, no, it's fine. Just raise your hand if you have anything that you would like to say. Seeing none, I will close out the public participation. And correspondence, now you have them from.
I have two correspondence reports, so I'll do them chronologically. This is May 11th. We had a few emails between both of them, so we'll take a second. We had an email asking the board to support the budget and save social and emotional support on an upcoming agenda, or have social and emotional support on an upcoming agenda. The author also provided the board with information on state guidance regarding LGBT issues. We had an email asking the district to change the author of the email address that the district has on file. An email asking the board and school administration to plan field trips differently in the future so all students, regardless of vaccination status, are included. An email asking the board not to make substantial cuts to educational services, particularly in social and emotional learning, class sizes, and enrichment experiences. A follow-up to the above email that corrected a typo. An email asking for a copy of the intent to homeschool form, and an email expressing frustration with first student bus fleet. The author asks the board to pursue legal measures to address alleged substandard performance or ask for compensation in the next round of negotiations with first student. The author also asks for school bus GPS tracking to be implemented on the buses. So that's May 11th. For today, we had an email to the town council on the Board of Ed advocating to keep the Board of Ed budget intact. An email expressing sadness at the proposed reductions to the board budget post-referendum. Author asks for united support for a strong school budget and desires that elected officials not post their opinions on social media pages. An email asking for united Board of Ed support for a strong FELE budget. The author also asks elected officials not to express their opinions on political matters on social media. An email expressing concern over frequent school bus breakdowns. An email expressing frustration over mechanical and cleanliness issues with the school bus fleet. An email expressing frustration over the inconsistent school bus schedule. An email expressing dismay over the general condition of the school bus fleet and an unreliable school bus schedule. The author is also concerned about the general condition of the district's buildings. An email from the Tolland Soccer Club president expressing concern over the general condition of the Birch athletic fields post construction. And an email asking for the superintendent to send out a list of safety procedures and security equipment to parents in light of the tragedy in Uvalde, Texas. That concludes that correspondence.
Thank you, Jacob. At this point, I'll open it up for points of information to the board members and Dr. Willett. So we can go from there.
Start it off. I think we'll talk about school buses a little bit in connection with the budget. So that was part of the year end thing. We might get some money back, so I won't talk about that here. I just wanted to say a couple things about the shooting that happened a couple days ago up in Texas. Getting some emails. expressing concern about that. Just to say as a board member, thinking about something like that ever happening in our district or anywhere near is, absolutely terrifying thing. And I know as we might disagree on many things, but I think we can all get behind keeping our students safe. I have a lot of confidence in our district staff and our facilities to keep our students safe. From everything that I've heard, we have a very competent system in place. But if there's anything else that we should be doing, that's something that I would absolutely want to hear about and make sure that we are doing everything that we possibly can to ensure security of our district.
Thank you, Jacob.
Like Jacob, I also wanted to just mention what happened yesterday in Uvalde. I know we're all very sad by the events there, and I'm struggling to find the right words, so bear with me. But I think that I see this first as a parent, so I understand why, as Jacob said, we received some feedback, and there's a lot of sadness and fear and anger. I'm still grappling with that myself. I did want to say that throughout the years I've been in a handful of lockdowns with our children, and I've sat on the floor in the dark, quietly shushing them while they're huddled together. And so I know it's scary, and I know that huge sigh of relief we would take when Mr. Swanson's smiling face would open that door. But I did want to assure everyone that in the instances that I've seen personally, and that's all I can really speak about through that lens, is that the staff has handled the situation smoothly and with a tremendous amount of care to our children throughout it. As Dr. Willett's email highlighted today, TPS has a robust safety plan in place that's consistently reviewed and updated. And I understand that parents still will have many questions. They will take them to our superintendent, and I know that he will answer them as best he can. I remember the Sandy Hook tragedy. My son was in kindergarten when that happened. I walked him into the classroom the day after, and his teacher met me at the door and hugged me and said, "I will protect your child with my life," which was not something I expected. And throughout the years, lots of staff has sat with my kids and held their hands through some scary moments. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Willett, and our public safety professionals for all the work that I know you do to put in place to ensure our schools have a robust plan. I'd like to thank all of our staff across TPS for the work they do every day to care for the mental and physical health of our students. I know so many of them have children themselves, and it must be really difficult to send your kids off and then take care of ours, but they do it every day. And then as a Board of Education member, I can just promise that I will continue to advocate for mental health in our schools, and I'll always ask questions to ensure that we're proactively doing all we can to keep our kids safe.
I don't think I can follow that. Thank you, John.
Anyone else at this time?
Well, I've communicated last night, today. It's a visceral thing for all of us, emotionally upsetting to experience this happening again, in the United States. And I think we all feel that deeply. And at this point, as I've said in some of my communications, I don't have a lot to say right now because words just aren't sufficient. But I will say that, in decades of work in education, I've never seen more committed people to the welfare and protection of children than those people in the Tolland Public Schools. And so I'm deeply grateful for all of our staff and for this community that clearly emphasizes love and humanity. So tragedy can sometimes bring us together. And, I've seen that happening in the last 24 hours, and I'm thankful for all the love and caring that people are giving each other, as we move forward as a nation to try to address these very difficult issues.
Thank you, Dr. Willett. Thank you. I'm gonna save mine for the chair report, but someone else good? Okay. Close that out. We do not have our student representatives. So we will move to the superintendent's report for the end of the year budget update.
So the last conversation we had, and you know, we've been through a couple cycles here, so we were very fortunate, and thank you to the community of Tolland for supporting the referendum that passed. Working with the administrators, we were able to come up with, and we did discuss this in a couple of contexts leading up to this meeting, a way of bringing the very valued positions that the board had articulated back into the budget. So the school counselor position and the THS math position in this structure are restored. These reductions are published, you know, for the public to review, also for the board to review on a dashboard, also in the agenda that is published today, so people can scroll through and see how we reach the number that the town council had given us to achieve. In addition to this, I put in information that we've been working closely with stakeholders in the district, including transportation, and knowing that we're going to get an excess cost payment. I believe that, you know, at the moment in time of this publication, which was actually when I put it together about, you know, a few days ago, about a week ago, that we would be at about a 179 balance. That's a projection for the end of May, if excess cost comes in at 150, and if we're able to get this 160,000 from transportation. Between that time and now, I believe we're going to get 163,000 from transportation. I still don't know what excess cost will ultimately be, but I think that estimation is pretty good. So at the end of May, we would be somewhere in the zone of the 179 to 200. And that's going to give us, you know, a month of spending where that number will run down, and it's a little unpredictable, but I do think, as I've said before, will likely be coming in under 100,000. These expenditures, pre-investments, as I call them, you know, we would be looking to take these and pre-invest, and so that's where you see this figure come in. So I can't make the figures perfect, not knowing how the remaining month plus, you know, a week are going to go. But I would say we are on track to be able to, you know, make some pre-investments as illustrated here, and end the year in that zone of about a little less than 100,000 with these adjustments to reach the town council's reduction. So that's provided to the board as my EOI report under the circumstances. This is the intention to go, you know, as published here. And then I would report out to FFC in the next FFC meeting, and also to the next board meeting, June 8th. I think June 8th happens before the FFC. I think so. So June 8th, you know, I'll report back to the board where we are on June 8th as an update to this. And by then we should have gotten excess cost, we'll know what it is and so on. Another piece of information not directly listed here is we are in the process with the town of processing the ERF purchases of the technology that were part of the board's plan. And so that's moving forward as well. And so we might see some in and outs there too. Most likely, you know, we will have those acquired in the summer, which is optimal, so we can get them prepared for the year. So the plans that the board had set forth, in my opinion, wisely, are all being executed. And this is where we are at this moment in time, or at that moment in time.
So first of all, it looks like the conversation was pretty productive. Last meeting, I wasn't able to make it, but I'm glad that the positions, the counselor and the math position were restored. I think that's a good idea. I didn't have a question though about the very last thing, the special ed, professional ed services, the 75,000 that we'd like to see restored, should the funds be available. What is that exactly, Dr. Willett?
That's the special education programming, the autism programming.
Okay.
Seeing warrant and other things that are involved with that. And generally what we do is, that's a program that I'm compiling some information on for the board, but it's been very valuable in helping keep everybody up to speed on the things that they're up to speed on.
Would the recommendation be if the funds weren't available? It looks like they are, but if they weren't, would the recommendation be to take that out of the ERF? Or is it something you could skip for a year?
Well, you know, it would put me into a position of working through a series of things to try to find those funds.
Okay.
You know, that's there as part of me listening to the feedback of the board as one of the items to possibly take out. And then, you know, again, anything out that we can reinvest in would be, you know, desirable. But the thing about special ed is there will probably not be on the horizon, especially given the circumstances we're in, a time where we are not going to need those kinds of funds. So if we can't get them in this manner, I will be looking at every other way to achieve that end. Because the training and things like that, for instance, CT sets, this is a requirement from the state of Connecticut. We must train all of our staff on. They dropped that on us and we cannot actually begin training until after July 1st, which gives us absolutely no opportunity to do that with our workforce. We're gonna have to do that when they get back, probably overtime and extra hours. You know, like there's so many ways that those funds get eaten up very, very quickly. And a lot of them are through providing life skills ABA stuff. It also may be that we may need to make sure, well, actually, it's quite clear that we're going to need to do stuff to get our staff prepared to use CT sets, and we're getting absolutely no assistance with that. So that's that kind of thing, you know, we would use for Laurent, likely a large part of that could also ultimately, because it's a special ed professional services expense, use it for CT sets training. And for those of you who aren't, you know, sure about that, but any educator who's following this knows the state of Connecticut is basically segueing all districts to their platform that here, you know, can't be released prior to July 1st, and we cannot train on it. You know, we can get an anecdotal idea of it through watching some trainings, but we can't get the actual hands-on stuff, which is really what we need. And it's a shift in how you report information to the state. It is probably the single biggest thing that we're going to have to adjust to, and it will very well have cost because we just aren't going to be able to execute that without bringing in some help or putting over hours, that type of thing. So that's easily going to be used, and that's why I would not want to lose it as a pre-investment. And if we don't get it as a pre-investment, it may be taken out of the budget, but I will then go into sort of an overdrive mode to find other, you know, mechanisms for doing that. Yeah. And I have been successful in doing those kinds of things. It's just energy spent there will not be spent on something else, you know. So optimally, we would get that as pre-investment.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Just in looking at the transportation credit, I mean, even just based on all the emails we're getting and what's going on, like, get a bigger credit than 160 for, you know, $300,000 over budget on transportation from what it looks like. And I mean, it just hasn't been good. So I'm not sure if there's more to negotiate there, but just throwing that out there. I haven't read their contract, but I feel like there's got to be some kind of violation there.
Because I, you know, I tried to be very kind of clear on where I think we are. I think we're at that or about 163 between now until June fiscal year end. I don't think we're going to get more than that.
Okay.
That doesn't mean we can't have conversations, but that's a fiscal year. That's probably where we're at.
When can we go out to bid for transportation?
The contract begins at the end of next year. However, there's a process for that, and it'll be great to have board members involved in that process so that you can get a full picture of the landscape. You know, a lot of information goes around, and we'll be able to ground that with other information, and I think you'll find that to be a productive process for anybody who wants to be involved.
And I don't know if this is the place, Dr. Willett, or if that's something that needs to happen in a different, but I am interested, you know, in that, how those conversations are going from the transportation perspective. You know, I have read the contract and have grave concerns as far as what they're supposed to be giving and what I'm seeing at the bus stops. So I'm intrigued in how that comes to 160 or 163 versus higher numbers or lack of productivity.
Well, I would invite, you know, members to participate in the process that we will engage in with.
Well, and I don't just mean, I apologize to interrupt you. I don't just mean the negotiation. I mean, for the next budget, I mean, what we're going through now. You're saying that, and some of that return is what we're talking about in there. How's that conversation go?
Well, and again, for better or for worse, this is my projection of what we're going to get. What we have between now and June 30th, with respect to funds that we would be able to utilize otherwise, that's it. But I think that there, I feel that board member involvement in the process as we move forward will help people understand the broad picture on this. These buses do have GPS tracking and we do have records of all kinds of things. And so I think that will be productive in those conversations, you know, both in helping us move forward, but also in helping everybody, you know, really see every piece of the puzzle. But as much as we would want to have circumstances be different, my most frank answer I can give you for this time is that is the.
I guess my next question is, how do I get information on how current conversation is going for that transportation?
What information would you be looking?
Well, how are we coming up with 160? What sorts of discussions are we having versus productivity that we're seeing now and what's in that contract? All of that.
It's conversations with the company. It's restoring what I feel are funds that can be given back to us with respect to how, you know, how special education, you know, is handled, that type of thing. You know, and I think the bus company is working with us and trying to, you know, provide the best outcomes. But again, you know,
and that's what I'd like to understand, because I don't see that from the end of the driveway or from the email traffic. I'm seeing things that disappoint me, and I want to see how it gets from that to that.
For each person who submitted something, I've had the business manager, who's also the transportation director, reach out to the families that have reached out. And so he has. I'm waiting to hear how that ends. But if you have the specific bus as a parent, I would submit that same thing too. And let's actually walk through the issue that you're presenting with the transportation director in your specific issue. And we'll get to see a sense of resolution.
We could bring that back here then.
You can. I would do it that way, though. I would, you know, provide rather than here, I would walk up that path, and then let's engage in that process. And then at the end of that process, we could talk about it here again if you wanted to.
Okay.
But I think that would be a meaningful exercise. You know, and we have heard from some people, and I do understand that there's consternation and coming out of COVID, things like that. I do think we are getting, you know, some favorable response. I do understand that people are curious about process, and I think that
because I think it is. I mean, it's both an individual parent concern and a very much a board concern. So I'm absolutely willing to take, you know, my personal things and take it through the process. I think at some point it's got to come before this board. These are the things we're seeing with this company, and this is how we're doing it. But in a specific,
and then
I don't feel. I think we're getting the high level, you know, the 30,000 foot view of it. I don't feel like we're getting enough detail to really have a good feel.
Yep, I can do a report on the statistics with respect to a variety of things for the board on transportation, on what, you know, what we have for any mechanical things, that type of thing, on the number of breakdowns, where, when, that type of thing. I can go back a few months and bring in data. The GPS, thing about GPS is that is hard to just provide massive aggregate on. It's better to say, hey, here's a bus number, whatever, on such and such date. And then we can go get the GPS and show exactly where that bus was and exactly what time it arrived at different places. And that's helpful in conversations like that. So, and then also, frequency at which the bus arrived exactly at a certain time. So, we see those things come in about 3 or 4, maybe 5. I think the business director is, I know he's communicating, reaching out to his family. And I can provide a report to the board on all of that kind of aggregate data at one of the future meetings.
It'd be interesting because, that GPS might show that the bus was stopped on, Old Post for quite some time for another bus to come get the kids to bring them to school.
That would be in the report of, if that is a breakdown.
And there are bullets in the contract that say, no child will be dropped off at their bus stop any longer than X number of minutes after the school. How often do we violate that? How often, at the beginning of the day, they're supposed to let you know which buses are in, which buses are out. How often does that happen? I mean, how are they performing? That's the type of numbers that I think we need to discuss. Thank you.
Question. So, are you looking, Dr. Willett, for a motion to approve these reductions to this budget, and then maybe a second action closer to the final year number about pre-investments?
Yeah, I think it's at the discretion of the board how you want to kind of move forward with this. These are what I have, but I do need to move forward with a course of action. And normally we would have these phased out. We don't have enough money to have 3 phases of documents this year. So this is really it. I don't intend on making many more changes other than that. If anything, we would have hopefully something like excess costs a little bit more. And then I would come to the table with maybe some additional things we could acquire facilities wise or some other way. So if I could get the board's approval to move forward with this, this would allow me to I would know I had your support to do that. There's no ambiguity about it. So, if you want to motion to support the reductions as presented in the May 25th, meeting, reductions in pre-investments in the May 25th Board of Education meeting, that would be great. Presented in, as item.
L5.
Is it L?
It's
No.
It's I1.
Oh, yes, to become L5.
Okay. So, motion to accept the
Put down first and then
To
do
move it down.
to action.
Any suggestions here?
All right, I'll chime in. I was comfortable with this list. I, as we all talked about, I really like the 2 positions that we added back. I guess the only thing I would probably like to see, if just at some point, Dr. Willett, if we do end up with a little bit more, I mean, it looks like we can probably pick several items to put forward as pre-investments as well, like world language textbooks, athletic equipment. So, if we have a little bit more, I'd like to see some of those kinds of things perhaps put back in with pre-investments, especially if we're gonna, get this bus money. But that would be my only thing. Other than that, I'm very comfortable with this list. So thank you. I know this was kind of nitpicky trying to come up with all these little items, but I think overall, I don't think there's any significant detriment, I hate that word, but to our students based on this list. I think that they're still very well taken care of, and I think we're still moving the district forward. So I am comfortable with this.
Yes. And one more thing, I just, when I look at this list, I guess after the conversations that we had with Mr. Stava in the FFC meeting, and which was appreciated, and please thank him for coming. I learned a lot in the conversation. But my concern is making sure that as we're making these cuts, he was talking about riding some of the trends. And, I might not have to pay for it here, but I'm certainly going to have to pay for it here, down the line, and kind of playing that, not game, but kind of that risk. And so as we're making these cuts and we're adjusting, and I was pleased when I heard you say earlier about looking for different funding mechanisms and doing that kind of stuff, because I think that's where our salvation ends up. I don't feel like next year's budget that we talk about is potentially going to be better. And so I'm leery about kicking the can down the road in the hopes that more money is eventually going to fall to us. Making sure that we're aware of that as we're looking at these, trying to change trends rather than, cherry picking.
So if everyone's ready, if you guys feel as though you are ready to make a vote on this tonight, then we can move it down to L5 at this time.
I'll move to move item I1 to L5, adopting the budget modifications.
Okay, any further discussion on that? All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Jaden says aye, but he's muted, just so that you have that. And last time we asked him to put this thing on, it turned that he disappeared. So let's not do that. I'm an aye as well. Therefore, we will vote on this for L5. But just so everyone say yes. I'm just making sure. Okay. Miracle Fields. So that was. Thank you for giving me the little cliff notes while I was giving my baby a bath and feeding her and everything else on my Tuesday night of craziness. I don't know who would like to maybe give an update as to.
So I can do a very brief. And then just
Very brief.
Went well last night. Around 9, they kind of resolve where they're at, and May 31st is the meeting the board is invited to continue the discussion. They postponed action.
Great job. Now, do we know, I agree with all of that, definitely. I didn't get the impression we were invited necessarily to participate in the negotiations. I got the impression that the negotiations are between the Miracle Field and the town council. I said my piece at the end of the meeting that I was a little disappointed that they didn't even read our concerns out loud. Now, that being said, it sounded like right from the get-go, they were not going to discuss the negotiations. So then I'm like, okay, maybe that's why they opted not to even talk about our concerns. But that would be my question for them now going forward. Are we actually, I don't think it's a joint meeting though, with us and the town council and the Miracle League. I got the impression we are still not really at the negotiation table. Sophia, you were on, Jen, I know you were too. I don't know if you guys heard it differently or.
No, I believe I heard the word that we would be able to provide commentary. So
Okay.
it doesn't sound to me like.
We don't
Like a
actually
peanut gallery.
get to, so
Right.
we can make our statements, we can read our letter. But and I would be curious about that as well, if we're, relegated to this, the public participation, if it's even on the agenda. So that would just be my concern. I've certainly said my piece. We came together and wrote the letter, but I'm still not 100% confident that our concerns will be heard. But I don't know really where to go with that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with Christine. I felt the same way. I was disappointed that the letter wasn't read as well. I think we had 2 meetings, or some of us had 2 meetings on Monday where we worked on that. So definitely didn't feel like partners. I will say, I think a couple council members did push to have us be partners. I think I also felt like Lisa did as well. So I'm hoping that we have more a part of that meeting than just spectatorship.
I don't know whether I misheard this, but I did hear at least one member say that they thought it should be included in their packet.
The letter.
Oh, yeah, I thought
That it
I
would be
did hear,
included
or
in
the contract. Did they say they would release the contract to us prior to the meeting? Did I hear that?
Yeah, and in my communication with the town manager, anytime I do receive something, I try to post it up there for you all to look at. But what I was also told is that because the negotiation process is ongoing, that it is changing very frequently. So almost anything I might give you is probably, once I give it to you within a few hours, not necessarily the most updated, you know. So we won't know for sure until they hand us the one and say this is the one.
Which with Monday being a holiday, I'm concerned that that might be Tuesday at 7 o'clock for a 7:15
and I-
meeting
Just
and
because we're on the topic, let me just see if something came out
Do you
today.
think that we can send them an email to ask them nicely if they would add our letter to the packet? Because
I think they,
She did
I'm
say
pretty
that.
sure, I was on the meeting as well, and they said that they were adding the letter to the packet, so it would be in.
that's what I
minutes.
heard.
I was conflicted because it did sound a little bit fuzzy on if we were gonna be partners or part of the meeting versus spectators that could speak. But the way that they were talking, it sounded like we're gonna be in between that, like not just public participation, but not, like we'd be able to be a part of the discussion, but not a decision-making factor. But I know that when you had said something, and when I had said something, and I missed what Jacob, I'm sorry, had said, but I know that, you know, we've all expressed our concern. We'd all expressed our desire to be a part of whatever the forward progress was, specifically as it impacts us as a board now, us as a town now, and future boards and future town councils. So I don't know, I kind of read it a little bit differently, but I mean, I definitely think we should probably we need to iron that out sooner rather than later, especially if it goes the way that. You know what I mean? So I think they heard our concerns, but
I don't have anything that I can tell is new from this thing. They do have new town email addresses, so I looked at the old address, I searched the name, and I see nothing from the old address or the name. At least not at this moment.
It felt as if too that the Miracle League organization or the legalists, when they spoke, they were really pushing to have a resolution. So I got the impression that they want a resolution and an answer at this special meeting. So I guess my concern would be there is that if we're presented with something, I mean, how are we going to get to a resolution by the end of the meeting if we still have some concerns that aren't being addressed?
That's why I'm concerned that we are not going to be allowed to really speak. And I know what frustrated me last night is there was at least 5 of us on that call, and they allowed the Miracle League to speak freely throughout the entire meeting. And then at one point, I tried to raise my hand during the discussion, and I think they said, well, I know we have Board of Ed members on, but we're not gonna, we won't let them talk right now. That wasn't the exact wording they used, but I said they knew. I mean, mine actually, I had my name incorrect. Yours was correct. Your name was there.
Mine said
your
Gina's
name.
iPhone, so they probably didn't know.
Oh, I think yours said Jen Galiship, BOE. So I said there was no question that there were Board of Ed members on, and I was a little discouraged that they didn't even say, hey, I see there's some Board of Ed members on, would any of you like to talk? So I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little pessimistic that we're not gonna necessarily be in the conversation. I don't know how to find that out prior to Tuesday.
I'm sure that I would find this out. Go ahead.
I got the feeling that it was very wishy-washy with regard to what the board's role is going to be with regard to the Miracle League. I hope it was conveyed to the town council, the Miracle League, and people watching that we are in support, all of us, of the Miracle Field. And we all think it's going to be an amazing opportunity for our town. But we just want, again, to have this put in place responsibly. And even the lack of articulation of what our role is concerning. It's telling, actually, that town council hasn't come together and even as a group decided what our role is going to be. So what is that saying about the Miracle Field? So I definitely have concerns, but I do hope that the project goes through in a productive and meaningful and long-lasting way.
I have one more thing, actually, because I will say, I remember, I don't know, it was a year and it was the beginning of summer, last year, I think, when they presented that whole PowerPoint of what the Miracle League is. So although, I hear what Lou was saying last night about being under the gun and being pressured or what have you. And I do agree that they're pushing for an answer or pushing for a direction because they did bring to us quite a bit ago. And I know other things came up. So realistically, I definitely think we also need to make sure that we do what's right by us as a town and us as a board, but then them as well, because we don't want to keep delaying and delaying and delaying either. I definitely think we need to make sure that we cover all of our bases. Like you said, wishy-washy is very scary. And I feel like I think we can all agree we don't want to have the turf field situation again, right? Like we've learned the big lesson on that. Right? What is the lesson and how we're going to handle it? I don't feel that they were trying to push or threaten, but I feel like they were being realistic with the fact that, hey, like we presented this a really long time ago. We either need, I hate to say Fisher cut bait, but Fisher cut bait, and what does that look like? So I think we need to be realistic with that. And again, I'm so pro this Miracle League. I would love it for Tolland, but we definitely need to make sure that we have our ducks in a row to protect ourselves, especially as a board. And how many of us are going to be on the Board of Education in 15, 20 years from now, right? When something has to be fixed, you know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. So we just want to make sure whatever our footprint and stamp is there. But I definitely understand why they are doing the push, because it has been, I would think it's been over a year. It's been well over a year, but.
Well, I mean, the thing is though, when rush projects, that's when errors occur. And,
Correct.
we are trying to make sure that for future boards, future town councils, I mean, obviously we know about the turf field and having to go through that, and we don't even have that resolved. And then we're gonna have another field where we can ultimately end up having, 8,000 to 16,000 for maintenance on a field. I think that was the rough, someone said it. Someone left our meeting the other day.
So many numbers.
I don't know why, but that could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But it was something where, we have to put that into consideration, and we have to do our due diligence as a board, but whether or not we're welcomed at the table, I guess, is more or less the question.
And we've already reached out to the chair of the council, but I also felt like he threw us under the bus a little bit last night when he said that we've had multiple opportunities with communications. And, I actually did say to him, I was at that May 5th meeting, and there was no invitation for me to speak, or I don't even think Dr. Willett, you spoke at that meeting. And, that was a little frustrating. And I believe my exact words were, well, wouldn't it have made sense as chair of the council to reach out to the chair of the Board of Ed? Something that was really something the Board of Ed should have been aware of, whether they felt that we should be aware of something just by reading their minutes. I think to me, that's a common courtesy and a respect that once this project moved to this site 8,
Correct.
there should have been some sort of communication.
Well, because this was a whole different site than it was originally, because that May 5th was that adaptive venture with the budget, conversation. And then it turned into the wooded area on Birch Grove, which was not initially that year and a half ago. It was even a new thought.
For us, for you, this is not about the miracle field. It's about that everything that has a beginning has an end. So what's the sustainability going to be? Perpetuity, right? So there may be, some really wonderful, awesome, dedicated people, and there are some commitments being made. But there are other fitness trails and things in Tolland, and the Tolland has a pattern of relying on certain things sometimes that then ultimately, sometimes they come through, sometimes they don't forever come through, and because everything that has a beginning has an end. So the thing about some of this agreement, some of the language is that it seems like in perpetuity. So, Miracle League of Northern Connecticut, I think, is a noble organization with people working very hard behind it. The domain was registered in October 2021. So, it's a fairly kind of on the radar for Northern Connecticut new. And so the question is, 10 years from now, will those people still be here? Will that still be here? 20 years from now, will those people still be here? Will that still be here?
Did they discuss any viability?
And that maybe yes, but the thing is, I think that question again, like if there isn't a set aside, then that's when the tension comes is, well, wait a minute, how is that going to get funded if for whatever year there's economic difficulties and for a series of years it can't? And I think that's kind of, and with this particular project, as Ms. Gallatin had pointed out, if that goes, and then you're taking it away, that's something else. You have a field that is built for students that are otherwise able to, now it's being taken away. So, that's something that if we don't look very carefully at perpetuity, look very carefully at a decade, 2 decades, then you could be in a position where you are, not you, but we as well-meaning people are putting a future board and a future council in an extremely difficult circumstance. And so we can probably avoid that through a very careful review of that language and a careful process. And hopefully that's where this is going. And I think they are trying.
Did they discuss that at all?
I think they were kind of grappling with what you had provided them. And I think that's hopefully what we're going to be seeing as we go forward is a real processing of the recommendations that this board provided, which I thought were good ones. And I think a number of members did comment that they felt they were reasonable and that they should be part of the conversation. That was positive. And I think the council was saying you should be part of the conversation. I heard some of that, so I'm hopeful about that.
So, Dr. Wood, you said you were gonna email them to just get a better understanding of what our role is at the Tuesday meeting.
I will do that. Yeah, I'll reach out to Ms. Hancock. Or the other thing to do, I apologize. You could reach out to the chair of the council, because Ms. Hancock and I are employees.
Yeah, no, I did
so-
reach out to Steve before this to let them know that we were going to discuss this. And then it turned into all of a sudden there's a vote and he didn't tell me about the vote when I told him that we were going to write a letter. So I don't know that I really am getting very far with that.
Right. As your employee, I'll reach out to the town manager.
I don't know
The,
that I'm gonna get
the political piece of that is
full
through the chairs of the.
I mean, I certainly can, whether or not I got, like I said, I talked
Yeah,
to him
no,
on
it's
Friday
not
and there was a
it's
vote.
not-
And I didn't know about the vote until the agenda came out. So it's not like I get the courtesy
No, yeah,
back
you've
of,
done a great job of
No.
reaching out. I think it's, again, it's, to me, I'll do that, but I may not get the
I
full
just, I
answer.
don't know. I mean, I certainly can try. I just don't know that.
I encourage you to keep trying.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're putting our Dr. Willett and Lisa in kind of a weird position. If the chair of the council isn't responding to the chair of the Board of Ed, and we're relying on the employees to get that communication coming across.
Well, I think it's the lack of information.
Right, okay. If that information isn't flowing correctly, we're putting it on Dr. Willett and Lisa to really step beyond what should be their bounds, and then we're creating some bad precedents.
I had a follow-up question for that, because in the memorandum of understanding that we got, we were listed as a party to that, and I don't know if they would do that in the contract, but assuming that they would, if we were listed in a party to a contract, we would have to vote on that, correct? Right, that would make
But there
sense.
wasn't even a line
Yeah.
for us on
So
to
the-
sign. To sign. We
Yeah.
were just like,
I'm
in
just,
there.
yeah, I was just wondering what the legality is.
that
for
would have, I would have to ask Jessica. I wouldn't
Yeah.
even.
We would have to ask Jessica, I
Say
think,
you're part of the contract
because-
and not-
at least a courtesy level, I think in the past, historically, the board has been included with a, for instance, the Fields and Grounds agreement. Technically, it's not a binding contract we can sue each other over, but it is an agreement that you are voting on and they are kind of adopting it. So there's a precedent for that kind of thing. And this is I've never seen language, a memorandum of intent.
Oh, is that, okay. that's what
Is the language that was used most recently, not to correct you, but
Yeah.
I have not seen such a use
kind
of
an
language.
odd- Yeah.
That's also why I think the board was, giving a great recommendation to say this does have to come to a point of contract at some point, so we know exactly what the parameters are. Because it is, the Tolland does do some magnificent things, but perpetuity is a struggle. So some of your fitness trails funded by very well-meaning people, but sometimes that may or may not be possible for them. And then the board has to, the school system will absorb some of that area if that abuts our school property. and as an example. So it's just the kind of thing that, in perpetuity, this is my favorite word for tonight, because is that going to be in perpetuity? Or is this going to be a problem for somebody, some board or council 10 years out? And that all can get determined now.
Yeah.
And so it's not about the miracle field. It's about making sure that we don't put anyone, children or boards, elected officials like yourself in the future, in a tough spot they can't navigate. And it'll be, not cursing. I didn't do
Well, I think they will be, like they're doing to the Turkey people.
Just to finish my train of thought. So the idea is if they do include us as contract, we wouldn't they still don't necessarily need to invite us to the negotiating table, but we would have to vote on it if we were a party to it.
But there wasn't even
Yeah.
a line, like we were mentioned in it,
Which I
but not
think
necessarily
sounds,
a active.
if that's an
participant.
actual contract, it sounds quite not legal.
But
I'm not
they're,
a lawyer, but-
they have to be in writing and you have to, everybody has to sign
Sign,
it as
yes.
part of the contract. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we're
that
party.
has a part, a player in the contract, yes.
But yet it was, we were listed as a
But
partner.
the question
but
is,
not-
do they have to include us? Could they just put it on Birch Grove and not include us as part of the agreement and just say, okay, well, we're the town council and we actually own.
They own that land.
Yes.
We own everything.
Right.
But if
They stressed
in
that
the-
point.
They
huh?
did
They
say
did,
that,
that point,
yeah.
that was.
But in that case, they'd have to take our name off. The
Yeah.
MO
Correct.
MOU,
Right.
MOI, whatever it
Yes.
was, as written, had us as a partner, and then had roles and responsibilities in there. If they took that out, then
Yeah.
it'd be well within their right to just
They'd
do
be
whatever
rather
they want.
insulting.
Yeah.
But they just do
I
it.
don't
Maybe
even
14,
think we
yeah.
know though at this point whether or not there's actually going to be a legal contract drawn up because the Leibowitz they were looking for a good faith MOI.
The
So-
200,000 though for the.
Well, that was a discussion, that was with how the town council felt, that was the good faith move, but they were looking, they also have an MOU or MOI already signed from Vernon, they said, so they were really looking for Tolland to do the same, which again, I understand for Dana's points. So I don't know that they actually said that they said they were gonna go back to discuss some of these items, but did they actually say that out of that will come a legal contract, or will it just be a differently or adapted MOI or MOU?
I got the impression that the council wanted the contract, so that was gonna be the negotiation on Tuesday, but I got the impression too that on Tuesday is it, like, it's going to be, Lisa's gonna draft it,
They
it's
wanted
gonna
some
be
decision.
voted on Tuesday, and what scares me, to be honest with you, this is my 4th meeting this week about the Miracle Field, and I don't feel like I know any more than I did last week about what's everybody's thinking, but I don't know, like I said earlier, I don't really know what we can do that we haven't done to get them to take a pause. Like, I thought after last night's meeting, they were gonna take a pause. And then all of a sudden, I'm listening, I'm going, wait, are they all trying to figure out what date works for them for a special meeting? And that's where I kind of said to myself, okay, I feel like we're still out of this conversation. Like, I understand like what Dane, you were saying, like that the Leibowitzes want an answer. But I do feel like now we're even more rushed to get an answer if in fact the contract is the way we are going. So I'm rambling here because I still don't feel like we know really how this is gonna play out. But so like, from a lawyer perspective, right, they can't mention us in a contract without us agreeing to it.
They can mention us in a contract, but we don't have a role or responsibility that we are agreeing to, but the point is that the town can sign us up for things because it's their land.
So could they actually say like the Board of Ed, not that I think that they would, but could they say like the Board of Ed will be responsible for maintenance during the school day?
It's what's it not said.
Yeah,
What's
and
not,
it's-
okay.
and
It's what
could the
isn't
town
said.
sign us up for that? Maybe, right?
I mean, your struggle is what is not said. So for instance, it may be that something maybe in language about the schedule for a certain span of time or whatever. It's just that all land is town land And if it's at the end of the driveway and Tolland students are using it, you can see a scenario, if you got into a time machine, a certain number of years from now, people would be saying, as you've heard before, hey, for a large span of every single day, children are using that are from Birch Road. It makes sense that your budget would be applied to the maintenance of this field, and that X number of dollars would be applied. And if there are town dollars set aside for the purpose that are there, then it's not as big of a problem that those town dollars are accessed. But let's say there are some tough years, some of those dollars aren't in the fund, then more of that people will be looking for a way to make up for that. And so one could reasonably look at this and say, unless there is actually a set aside, then we can expect potentially there is a probability that would then be ultimately owned by the place where the children are most of the day accessing it. You can see how that progresses to that point. And so it's just about having a very frank conversation if that's where we're going to maybe in the future. And if there's no set aside, then if there are rough years, as you have a history of in Tolland, frankly, if I'm being frank, this is not about the miracle field, absolutely not about the miracle field, of saying, hey, we know we've got this great organization head, Tony's always next to me, so he gets that. And hey, what can you do? And Tony says, I can give 5,000, I can give 10,000 this year and this year. And then 3 years from now, Tony moves, or he's heading somewhere else, and someone comes in, Walt comes in, takes over Tony, and there's changes in, well, I didn't promise 5,000 a year. I don't know that I can do that with this group now, it's a different situation for me. And so then what does the town do in that situation? They kind of say, they can't go after Walt because he's new. Tony's left and pledged the years that he could, lived up to it for the 3 years that he was there, and families took him somewhere else. And so now there's a hole. And how does that hole get filled? And I think that's the thing, is that if you're gonna, this is in perpetuity, how would that hole be filled? That's what the contract has to specify. Where would that specifically come from? Is that from the assigned fund balance? Are they going to move some money over there? Is there going to be a fund that's put in? Where, if that doesn't happen, as you stated in your Board of Ed recommendations, on that year, that X amount is not able to be moved over, which sometimes at no fault of anyone, it can't. Exactly where does that come from? Should be specified. It will come from the town's assigned, the assigned fund balance to that. And then it's not going to be handled any other way. But without that kind of language, that ambiguity has not served your district well in the past. That ambiguity has resulted in, conversations that you've experienced.
Well, it doesn't sound like we might not even have a choice, so.
Well, it is, again, I want to say it's hopeful in that I did hear some council members really speaking to the points you made, and them going back and really considering those. I think that there was people saying that. And so between now and whatever happens, when that gets put back to us as a contractor or whatever, we will see whether that is honored, and I think there were some people saying that they would. Let's see if that's how it plays out. And you are in kind of a position of waiting to see what they do.
Okay. I think we went up and down the miracle field already.
One more thing to say, because as everybody was talking, things came back a little bit. So from what I understand, so when Katie Murray was asking Steve for clarification, they did vote at a previous meeting that was supposed to be our collaborative meeting, that Lisa can enter into negotiations with Miracle Field for the town. So she clarified that last night. Then they voted on the ARPA funds. So that's almost like a second type of move forward type situation. I don't recall if they said that Lisa was going to reach out to you, Dr. Willett, or if they had asked her to reach out to you on behalf of the Board of Ed. But I would I don't know, like Sophia had said, to try to reach out to, Steve Jones, the council chair again, to see, because the way I understood it is that it sounds to me when they were making that special meeting, that was going to be that vote. So if anything, we've got to reach out, and I know that in this, I'm assuming that I've made communications to the town council, how I feel verbally on the call as well as email. I'm hopeful that the rest of my teammates have. I know they have that letter, which I do know that's gonna go in the minutes. I assume that that's gonna be a part of the contract, but I think that's where we need to reach out and see. I'm hopeful that he'll give you some time, actually, honestly. Because I am concerned, just listening to everybody talk and then me putting all the nuggets together that I heard last night, that's what it sounds like to me. But yeah, I don't want us to go on under assumptions, because we're all going over these what if things because we're in the dark a little bit. I wish that, we did understand a little bit more about that joint meeting. I do know that there was that meeting, but so I did, we have that joint Board of Ed budget meeting in town council, and that's the one. So that was crystal clear, but I guess this is a learning experience too, that we need to make sure that that's crystal clear for us as well as the town council, because this is a great opportunity for us to be connected and unified as town council and Board of Ed for our community. And I feel like we're doing this and we're going against the wall. And I'm sure we all feel like we're trying to say, hear me, listen to me, listen to me. And I don't know, I think there's an opportunity for us to.
Well, they're serious about it because they did allocate the ARPA funds to it. And so that is momentum rolling.
Correct.
And now, see how that plays. But I think, again, reason to be hopeful. I'll speak to Ms. Sancock.
Sorry, I didn't mean to delegate to you guys. I was just trying to put stuff together and I just, as things are coming up.
As a differentiation, Honeywell project, for instance, our lawyers were involved, their lawyers were involved because we had that Honeywell agreement that went across the town and all that. This is a little different than that. This is really in their domain. Their lawyers don't have to talk to our Jessica that is looking, but there's probably not a whole lot ultimately that will come from that since we don't have.
Yeah, let's keep on going. I think we've gone over this quite multiple times, same facets going through again. So let's move on to the committee and liaison reports. Dana, did you want to do anything with the Birch Grove with the field email that we had received about that?
Yeah, so that went back and forth and I have some notes and my computer won't pull up my notes. And I think I need an update. So basically I haven't been giving Birch Grove updates because we haven't been meeting, because right now we're at the point where the only time we're having meetings is when anything needs to be discussed, voted on, or what have you. It's all the little small stuff. As far as the field and the condition of the field, because there has been several that have come to us as Board of Ed, and I believe Mr. Garrett sent something to the town as well. He's not the only one who's questioned it. Pete Saba did give an update to Katie Murray, who is the chair of the building committee. And he's been doing this, he's been working on these efforts since last fall. And I remember at our Birch Grove Building Committee meeting, they said, it's going to take some time to germinate. That's why the kids can't go on it. It's going to take some time. It's a year plus before it's going to do it. So they have been attacking the issues with the field since prior to community concern. So it is a concern. I did reach out to Katie Murray as our Birch Grove Building Committee chair and asked her as things come up to apprise me of that. That way I can report things to the board, or specifically things that are kind of in the bustle of the Birch Grove Building Committee, specifically in this miracle field, so that I can report. But these are all things that are just happening based on things that we voted on months and months ago. So it wasn't anything changing. So there was nothing new to report. What I would ask, if there is something that you folks want to know about, please send me some correspondence. I can reach out to Katie and she can work with the partners, with the Regional Mateus, the vice chair, the business partners, because right now the only person we can technically reach out to would be Dr. Willett without tasking staff, which we're not allowed to task staff for information. So I'd be happy to be, as the liaison, I'd be happy to get the information as needed. But again, we haven't, since the last time I actually had a report, that was the last time we met with some change orders, small change orders on furniture and fixtures. Hopefully we'll have some information about the field supposedly over the next handful of days, and I can get that to the team. But other than that, I'm happy to, if I don't have the answer, to get the answer for the team and get it back to you, because I know it is a hot topic. I did see the field. And it's looking like my backyard sometimes. Not growing. So, but I know that Pete's right on it. And I'm so glad to hear that you guys had a great, robust conversation with him at FFC, because he really is in tune with what's going on with the facilities.
I'm confused, maybe I'm mixing up the soccer field with the Miracle Field. Why is why is the Birch Grove Building Committee involved with the Miracle?
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. I'm just talking about the soccer
All right,
field.
thank you.
Sorry.
What it is
All
that
right.
that was the original Birch Grove site. The new site is a completely different one. than what
Yes.
We talked about
My
originally.
apologies. It's just the plain old soccer field when you're at the place gate and it's straight ahead, kind of by the emergency exit. That's what I'm talking about.
Where the portables were.
Where the portables. Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse them.
I'm just actually very curious, when will the Birch Grove Building Committee be completely dissolved? Now that the school is open, like, shouldn't Mr. Stava, instead of Katie, be responsible for the school stuff?
I would say until it's actually closed.
So
out.
we can't close out until every change order and every resolution is done. The Birch Grove Building Committee can't disseminate, and then we have to sign it off, then it needs to come to the Board of Ed, who needs to close it out, then it needs to the town council, who needs to close it out. So until, I mean, there's still random file cabinets that need to be replaced, there's still random things that need to be repaired. So until all those fine, minute details are done, we can't close the committee. And
So Ms.
sign-
Murray is still is Ms. Murray making then the decisions over Mr. Stava, or is she working with him since he's our
She
facilities
can't make
director?
decisions unless
Okay.
the building committee makes a vote on a decision. So she's not making decisions with Mr. Sapa. He's been working on the field.
She probably has to call meetings together
Hmm?
she probably has to call meetings together to
Correct.
approve change orders.
Correct.
Part of the benefit of having that happen is we don't end up paying for it in your operating budget. It may come out of certain funds that are allocated to that project still.
So yes, if something needed to happen, if there was, let's say there was a huge sinkhole, but let's say something happened, then we would need to call a meeting to order, have a quorum, have the discussion, have them present it, the folks working on the area, whatever it might be, and then we need to vote on it.
But eventually, and probably in the near future, that will end.
But do we have a
It was
timeline
supposed
for
to
that?
end.
Yeah.
It was supposed to.
Yeah.
But
I just
there's
find
no-
it
What's
interesting
your word?
that Ms. Murray,
In
as a
perpetuity?
Birch Grove Building Committee and a town council member, she can talk directly to Mr. Stava, but like you can't even talk directly to, like, you know what I mean?
Because I
Like,
think that
it's
she's.
just, it's a
well,
weird runaround to try to get information back to the board. It just seems like there's a whole lot of people we need to go to. And you can't even really do it. You'd have to go to Ms. Murray, who would have to go to Mr. Stava, like I said.
or Dr.
It's just interesting to me. I would have thought that by now we could just be done and Mr.
One
Stava.
way we
would
can
just-
handle it, and understandably, this will probably end soon, but when I meet with Mr. Stava, a lot of times in most recent, we've had a lot of things in the radar, so maybe certain things didn't rise to the level of other things.
Mhm.
But if we see something, we could bring it up at an FFC, and then you can get full articulation on whatever's going on. And that's for the interim, because I do think you're going to get to the end of that. You're almost at the end of that, and these are the hanging chads, so to speak, to use the term.
Yeah,
These are the last little
It's
pieces
the last
that need
minute
to get
detail.
resolved.
There's little things, like we still have been on the phone with, the last meeting was fun talking about furniture store racking.
Yeah.
And so
You know, those close
anybody's
out
gone through a
activities.
remodel, the light switch is the last thing to get fixed in a little hole in the corner. So that's kind of where we're at.
Those closeout activities tend to be asymptotal though. They can go on forever while you're waiting for. And so I guess my question would be, at some point, we've got to say, okay, we're done and move what's left to other appropriate parties. I'm just wondering what that timeline looks like.
Well, our last meeting was scheduled, we had to have a meeting in December to extend our meetings January, February, March. Then in March, we decided to not schedule meetings, but schedule meetings as special meetings as needed on demand.
The catch
So we didn't-
22 is that means we may not have to incur expense on our side for things to get resolved.
But that also means that we never have an end date, because we can always just say,
Extend.
we may need to.
I think that's
I
not,
think we need to get that file cabinet that needs the.
I think they're gonna get to an end date, but I think we're in this kind of, we want to be careful because we want to have that not be our problem from a funding standpoint, but we do want the keys to be handed over at some point. And I think that we are heading in that direction. It's just in the interim, we should make sure that as they come on the radar, that we also apprise FFC of it. So if I see something on the radar, I would say to you, hey, let's put it on FFC, kind of
I
like.
think that's
I
a
did with
great
some of these
idea
other
because I
things.
think we were all kind of surprised by the email that we got from.
But I didn't know that either at that moment, but it's probably because we had a whole bunch of other stuff on the radar. That gentleman sent it, that they got on the radar, but we've had quite a few other things that have been on the radar.
Thank you.
So no more updates. That's it.
Curriculum.
Yes, so we met earlier today. We had two items up on our agenda. We had a nice discussion about the new Black and Latino history class, which is now a state requirement, and what the curriculum will be for that class. Understanding because it's a new class that has never been taught before in Tolland schools. This first year is kind of almost like it's a test run here almost, so we'll get more details ironed out in the following year as to what exactly what materials might be used. They have a library of things to pick from that are included up in the curriculum packet, which we receive. It's on the dashboard. What exactly works well will be seen. Additionally, we have a curriculum committee tracker up now. Dr. Willett and I have been having discussions about this, and he was able to put together a system for any board member, not just committee members, to submit things that they'd like to see on our agenda.
I know one.
Oh,
Japanese tea party.
You can put it on the tracker now. We can talk about that.
Can't wait.
Well, just bring it back, please, so we don't have to hear Ashley say it anymore.
We do have distraction about what goes on the agenda, but we will consider it. This will just make it easier for us to look at everything that comes in, because it's a broad subject area, and make sure we don't miss everything. So we looked at it up in the committee, and it'll be up live on the dashboard in a bit.
Okay, perfect, thank you. FFC.
Yes, so we met last week. Mr. Stava joined that meeting, which was wonderful. He walked through everything kind of going on. He talked about how over the past several years, he's actually been able to reduce his budget. But actually Birch Grove, ironically, can be a little bit more expensive to maintain, specifically with the HVAC system. So that's just something to keep in mind, because we would think that there'd be no need for any of that budget for that school. But we talked about the reduction specific to Mr. Stappas and his team that Dr. Willett just presented tonight. And overall, he thinks that we're in a good spot and adequately funded at this time, but any additional budget cuts could potentially lead to kind of the Band-Aid fixes now that will have long-term effects. We talked about the Miracle Field. I don't need to talk about that anymore. We talked about Appendix F1, which is the 430 budget to actual numbers. We talked about that actually in the meeting prior to FFC, so there was really nothing new there. And then we did talk about the buses, and to answer, I think it was Chris's question. So we have one more year of the contract, and then we would have to discuss kind of negotiations or going out to bid this September, because it's a long process if we were in fact going to change companies for the 23-24 school year. We did talk a little bit about if we thought the bus company was being proactive to a lot of our concerns. I mean, I think a lot of Tony shared, I shared, just stuff that we know just with our own children. That's only two of us. So, and how they are kind of looked after mechanically and all that. So there's definitely, some issues. I think the bus company's aware of it, but this is, I think, going to be an ongoing conversation over the next few months. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, negotiations, Jen is now going to be chair. I did send an email out. I'm not sure if anyone saw it, but there was just a switch up on that. So you can just say that you guys met and that's it. Perfect.
Yes, before I was chair, so I won't find the date.
So essentially, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware. So do you have anything for the communications? And then, of course, I'm sure you have.
I have PTO, I mean, communications, we had a whole meeting Monday that talked
the
about
letter.
our communications meeting, so that's what our communications meeting was about, the letter about the Miracle Field. PTO stuff is, all the PTOs came together to provide our bus drivers a staff appreciation breakfast this past Monday. BGP and TIS had staff appreciation lunches this week with raffles for their staff. The Birch Grove Book Fair and Ice Cream Social last week were both huge successes. Let me tell you, I worked that book fair the night after the ice cream social, and those books were gone, gone. So that was awesome. No, I'm sorry, it was after the art show. They had an art show, and the books were gone. So they did get some in on Thursday, thankfully, for the ice cream social. So they did great. They're looking forward to the 5th grade fun day, and they're also going to be launching a school supply box fundraiser soon. The book vending machine at TIS, I guess, is a huge success, and Mr. Deneen is reporting that students are working really hard to complete their 10-book challenge, because that's how they get their token for the book vending machine. The vending machine at Birch Grove is there. It's cute. It's all wrapped up, like coming soon. But they're launching it to time with the governor's reading challenge, and then the One Book One School, which if you don't know what One Book One School is, that's where the PTO buys every child in the school the same book, and they all read the same book at the same time.
Wasn't there a hamster one time? There was a couple of oceans, I don't remember.
I think so. Harry.
Yes.
Might have been one of the Harry books. Yeah.
Not an actual.
No.
We don't
Every
like-
child gets a gerbil. That was the next one.
Probably, yeah. Send them over. Yeah.
Send them the line item.
So, I'm gonna retire before we have that going.
You get some emails on that.
Yeah.
For TMS PTO, 8th grade promotion signs are available for sale until Friday. I think there's order forms online and on Facebook. Pickup is Wednesday, June 1st from 3 to 6 at TMS. They're actively looking for 3 new board members. The High School Booster Club has the completed senior banners due on Monday, June 20th. There's a self-defense class for the community on Saturday, June 4th from 9:30 to 12:30, which is $40 per person at THS. There's a Booster Club meet and greet June 6th in the THS library. They also need some new members. And the annual Eagle Scramble is scheduled for Sunday, September 25th at 1 p.m. at Topstone, and they need both sponsors and golfers.
Thank you. Policy.
Yep, so we met this afternoon and got back to our, our normal tempo of 2 of the compliance ones in the one conversation. The compliance ones we looked at was 4060 employment checks and 5160 on fundraisers. Those were approved and will be in the queue for whenever you guys have room on the agendas. And then from a conversation perspective, we looked at 5150 or the field trips. We had a wonderful conversation there and ended up with some recommendations that are much shorter than predicted. So we should be able to discuss that one in the next policy meeting and perhaps even bubble it up after that.
Okay. And can you please get your minutes in for April?
Yes.
2 from April, just in case you need the memory. 2. Okay. Mental health.
Oh, they did meet. It did meet, and there not a whole lot specific to the board. It was a general discussion on LGBT issues in town that kind of encompassed all age ranges. The recommendations have been made on that time, or at this time, in our next meeting, I believe. So it's not going to be next Monday because that's the holiday, but I think it'll be the Monday after that.
At this time, I'm not forgetting anyone else. Everybody was smiling. Okay. Chair report. So I read this without crying, but we're gonna go for it. Okay. There are no words to choose about losing children to senseless crimes. I can still recall Newtown very vividly. My son was in first grade with a brand new teacher, their first year of having her own classroom. So this was a part of the email that I sent her following the tragic events. I just feel the need to tell you thank you. Thank you for taking care of my precious baby every day. Thank you for encouraging, loving, and watching over him and all the other, I'm gonna get emotional here, and all the other children daily. This is a difficult world these kids are growing up. I am just very grateful for the environment that you provide them. Here we are, almost 10 years later, and this is still true today. Teachers and staff, thank you for everything that you do. Safety of our staff and students is always the #1 priority. I do know that Tolland has plans and protocols in place for emergencies. Dr. Willett is always available to take the time to answer any questions that you may have. Sadly, mental health is currently a bigger problem than ever before. It's an enormous elephant in the room and no one likes to talk about it because it's taboo. On top of that, COVID only added fuel to the fire. I hope through the mental health task force, we can learn what our community needs are and then take action to address those needs. As Morgan Freeman says, how do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. We are one community in this large world. We need to be proactive and help each other out. My hope is that more people would choose kindness. Ask yourself, what is your random act of kindness for the day? And more importantly, what will it be tomorrow? Okay. So let's go on to board action. So we have L1 up first.
So L1 is, as you can see. One is percent apparently nothing. Just like okay, so policy 1080, visitors in schools. See the legal reference with the yellow ads and the strikeouts in blue. Just was put forward for the Board of Ed's review. It has gone through the policy committee. The motion requested tonight is a motion to approve the changes and updates to BOE policy 1080, visitors in schools as presented in item L1 of the May 25th meeting. And so essentially it's just making this updated with Shipman's recommendations with respect to language. The yellow is all of the updated portion. This brings it up to speed from 2013 to 2020. And then essentially it's just a further articulation of conservation, parents and protocols, complying with our protocols and security procedures. Fortunately, security and protocol procedures have become an important thing to get into language. That's one of the differences. As well as a legal update to the most recent legal references.
We have reviewed this, so okay to go.
Sorry, no, I saw something. It was presented as I1, so right, but according to this, it was presented as I. So we need to just change it, or just make a motion to change it to L1 versus or strike it.
Well,
Okay, never mind.
I1 was the superintendent.
You are thinking of, and logically, so you're thinking of what we moved to action from I1, right?
That's the last.
And that's the last one.
We just wanted to make sure, we wanted to make sure minutes are correct over
So
here.
you were, yeah, thank you for sharing.
No, that is.
But that was,
Okay, so at this time, I will entertain this motion that is set forth here.
I'll move to approve the changes and updates to Board of Ed policy 1080, visitors in schools as presented in item L1 of the May 25th board meeting. Second.
Any further discussion, questions? Anything? Those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Jaden is an aye. He just giving a thumbs up on there. I'm an aye as well. Therefore, this passes unanimously. I don't even want to ask him to put his voice on. Okay.
next item is policy 5040. Essentially, as this was talked about in the policy meeting and move forward, 5041 is an antiquated policy that talked about bus cameras. So 5040 and 5041 were combined. So now it is the new 5040. And so essentially you'll see the, again, paradigm of using yellow and italics as adds and strikeouts or blue or strikeout language. Essentially 5040 is as it was updated prior, with the exception that we've added the language for video surveillance videotaping on buses. So instead of having it as its own separate policy, it was brought into the transportation policy, which makes sense. Old language like tape, nobody uses tape anymore, so that's out.
And just to be clear, this is the two parts of the two actions, because we have the first one to.
Right,
approve
so the
changes,
two actions
and then
are
to
eliminating
follow it
the
to eliminating policy 5041. So I will go ahead and entertain the first motion to approve the changes.
Move to approve the changes and updates to BOE policy 5040 transportation as presented in item L2 of the May 25th board meeting.
Second.
Sorry. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Jada, oh, I got the hand from Jaden, so I as well, therefore this passes unanimously, but then we have to do the second of eliminating policy 5041.
Move to eliminate policy 5041.
Dana Philbin, second.
Any further conversation? All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Tony, did you say an aye?
I did.
Or just making sure. Jaden, I got an aye. I'm an aye as well, therefore this passes unanimously as well. Okay. Thank you very much. Go to 3.
Okay, policy 1091, volunteers. There are no strikes. Similarly, it's simply additions to update this policy to the most recent language from S&G. So you'll see that there's not a whole heck of a lot added. It is simply a sentence that it will comply with health and safety protocols in place at the time, not limited to any, but including but not limited to any health screening protocols. And you're seeing a lot more of that COVID and post-COVID. They're adding health and screening protocols to language.
Who would like to make a motion?
Motions.
I'll move to approve the changes and updates to board policy 1091 volunteers as presented in item L3 of the May 25th meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion on this one? There's none. All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
I didn't see you again, Tony.
Aye.
Okay, and Jaden's an aye as well, and so am I. So this one will pass it, and that's really as well.
Next item is policy. I feel like I'm at auction. Next item is policy 50. Is that 50? So 5010, student attendance and truancy. There are some new public acts, and there's some language about chronic absenteeism that wasn't part of the landscape before. And so this language is added to the policy to update it, and that'll allow us to continue to work in the regulation and add, codify the language of chronic absenteeism. So truancy was literally not showing up at all for quite a long time. Absenteeism can be excused and unexcused, but the state wants us to address it. So you can have a series of days that still are excused, such as the remote learning days, but if they go beyond what is good for the child, regardless of whether they were verified or excused or expected to act on that. And so that's where chronic absenteeism comes in as a term. So you'll see the public acts also are updated accordingly. And that's really the justice of it, is just moving that language in. And the pandemic is largely what's driven that change. So that's where you see the acts added in yellow. And the chronic absenteeism term. And the motion is to change same as the others.
Go for it, Jacob.
All right. You know, I like this. Move to approve the changes and updates to Board of Ed Policy 5010, student attendance and truancy as presented in item L4, the May 25th board meeting.
Dana Feldman, second.
All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Jaden said aye. For this passes unanimously as well. Okay.
L5 is your.
Oh, L5, yes. And that I have.
So I
that
do have
over
a
here.
motion to
Just ask.
suggest for you. if you want to.
Yeah, so now this is Lisa for L5. Jacob came up with that we're going to adopt the modification list.
So you had a proposed.
I do. I have some proposed language for you. It is motion to accept the superintendent's proposed reductions in reinvestments as presented in the DOE meeting of May 25th, 2022 as action item.
Got all that, Jacob?
Yes. And I think I might be able to, did I get it in there? I did. There you go. It's blank.
I
Oh,
have
wait, it
confidence in
is,
Jacob.
nope,
He's
it's
a
gone, it's not
professional.
there.
You can wing it.
Yeah.
You can wing it, you got this, Jacob.
This is
Come
why
on, you
I
make them all the
have
time.
not-
We should make her.
Hold on. wait.
You just said you liked it.
You could do
Yeah, go for it. Come on.
Okay, yeah. I move that we adopt the superintendent's proposed reductions in pre-investments as presented at May 25th Board of Education meeting.
Yeah, this is good.
Second.
As action item.
Perfect, perfect. Any discussion? Very good. Okay, all those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's fine. Jaden? He's an aye, okay. So then all those opposed can say nay.
Nay.
I'm an aye as well, so, but this still passes with majority. So we have everyone on there, Lisa? Okay. So now let's open up public participation. Oh, look at this. We only have Lisa. We have Jaden. So we're gonna go ahead and just close that.
Lisa doesn't have anything to say.
Republic.
Okay, so then at this time, we have the executive session for the purpose of superintendent's evaluation. You guys want him here for the first part?
So just for the people at home at CBC too, we're.
Yeah, I know, but we have to make a motion, so we're gonna make a motion.
So they know what happened.
Inviting you into the first part or the second part.
I got a question about that, just procedurally. So do we have to get out of executive session and then invite him back in if we do it as two parts?
I don't think so.
I thought we did just invite you in and
You can just invite me
In and out. but I
Go to
don't know.
executive session and.
So we could have that first part.
Yeah, like, we can invite him in now, right? So I have to go back in the session to re-invite him.
Well, we have to go back into re-invite him to do a motion.
No, because I've never not been invited, but no point in either direction on that one, but I don't know. I would suggest that we could work it out. I don't think.
So we
semantics
just put it in
police
the
are gonna
initial,
come at us.
in the motion to invite Dr.
invite
Willett in.
him.
Invite him in, and then we just,
The second part. is-
Whatever you're on.
okay.
Sure, I think I can do it. So I move that we enter executive session for the purpose of superintendent evaluation, inviting Superintendent Dr. Willett into the meeting or into the executive session during the second portion of said section. That portion.
Totally vote second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.